Hey, what's already? Welcome back to News Dose. And one thing that I just despise by this point is the endless amount of excuses as to why Xbox Game Pass is bad for the industry. I mean, it really just kind of feels like this topic keeps popping up, and it just keeps getting more and more ridiculous as the goalpost continues to move onward. And I've said this before, but my thing about Game Pass is that if you don't like it, yeah, that's perfectly fine. Go buy your games instead. That's another great option if you can do that. But the world that we live in right now, there's unfortunately a lot of people that just can't do that month in and month out. Gaming can be an expensive hobby, especially with some of this generation's price hikes. So Game Pass, in my eyes, whether you agree with its business model or not, I'm always going to root for it, because I think it's one of the only true consumer-friendly options that the game industry currently has. So that's why I tend to praise it. I do buy most of my games, but I do view this situation from a consumer's perspective. And to me, I think it's just weird when I see consumers specifically complain about it. And the thing is that more often than not, the people that complain about it are usually a fanboy of another console. Now, that's not always the case, but that does tend to be the trend more often than not. Well, today, we got another. I'm going to go and call it a curious perspective about Game Pass from somebody within Sony's camp. And yeah, we're going to dive into all of that. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right to things, though, starting off with the Tales of Xillia remaster leak. This was actually in the rumor mill, I believe it was about a year ago. Some listings showed up on a retailer website, if I'm remembering correctly, but now it feels like a remaster is pretty much all but confirmed. You can see here on Ratatan that Bandai Namco Europe apparently accidentally made an upcoming Tales of series news video public on YouTube, and rather than using their own thumbnail, they may have allowed YouTube to choose its own from the video because the thumbnail was a random screenshot from none other than Tales of Xillia. Now, I mean, nothing is 100% confirmed until Bandai Namco themselves makes the official announcement. I mean, this could just be a celebration Tales of trailer for all we know, but at the same time, this seems like a fairly good indication, if anything else. And it also just kind of makes a lot of sense when you start to think about it. Bandai Namco has been very keen on remastering the Tales of series these past few years, and Tales of Xillia is an obvious choice for them just because it's been locked on the PlayStation 3 since it first released in Japan back in 2011 and 2013 for the rest of the world. So not only was it exclusive to the PlayStation 3, a console that still doesn't have backwards compatible support on modern platforms, but it also released very late in that generation. So a lot of people just unfortunately missed out on this game and its sequel as well. Now, that is one question that fans do have. If a Tales of Xillia remaster does indeed exist, will it also include the sequel, which a lot of fans claim is actually even better than the first game? Either which way, though, it sounds like we could get a confirmation as early as August 18th when they'll air whatever this video ends up being. Now, we also got some news for a potential Switch 2 port. The Tekken 8 director was asked about a possible Switch 2 version of Tekken 8, and his response was that from a business standpoint, the Switch 2 is doing quite well. So it'd be a very good business decision if you're trying to get a bigger audience. But the amount of work that would have to be done on the game makes it not a very easy decision. At this point in time, there is nothing to announce. So people are kind of viewing this response in a few different ways. Some people believe that he left because they secretly have something to announce for Tekken 8, maybe even possibly soon, but he's just not allowed to do it currently. Then there's other people that are viewing this as, well, the Switch 2 will require a lot of work, so they'll look into it, but nothing is necessarily guaranteed. And I do think that's a better way to view this specific response, not necessarily because it's the correct answer, I have no idea, but rather because it's a way to kind of temper your expectations, that way you don't leave disappointed during, let's say, the next Nintendo Direct, if an announcement doesn't happen. What I will say here, though, is that the fact that this is even being considered at all is a good sign. I still believe there's a lot of people that aren't prepared for just how capable the Switch 2 actually is. It's going to get a lot more big AAA games than what we're typically used to seeing on a Nintendo console. I mean, they still need to fix the, game keycard situation and everything, because that's really hurting third-party games, but hey, if they can fix that, then I think that they're going to have a good generation for third-party support, and maybe even for Tekken 8. Now, we also got a release date for the upcoming Patapon spiritual successor, Ratatan. It had a Kickstarter campaign last year that was very successful. It ended up raising about $1.5 million, which just kind of goes to show you how much love the Patapon series actually has. I know it's a smaller Sony IP and everything, but it was very popular back in the day for the PSP, and clearly, there's still a lot of fans that wants a brand new installment. And if you do, I mean, here it is, because this might as well just be called Patapon 4. It comes from some of the original Patapon creators, and, you can just tell. So it will launch into early access next month on September 19th. Now, unfortunately, because it's an early access title, this is only for Steam for the moment, but even still, it's been a pretty good year for Patapon fans. They got the 1+2 Remaster, and now Ratatan as well. I never would have expected all of that, but hey, here we are, and just good times. Okay, so let's go talk about this Game Pass situation, because this is one of those things that I think is just irritating by this point, because I feel like there's a lot of willful ignorance that comes along with all of its naysayers, which apparently includes the former PlayStation boss, Shawn Layden. Yeah, check this out. This is from an interview with GameIndustry.biz, and the report says that beyond the financial wisdom of making new games available for quote-unquote free at launch, Layden worries about the change in ethos behind it. He said that there's a lot of debates going on. Is Game Pass profitable? Is Game Pass not profitable? What does that mean? That's really not the right question to ask anyways. You can do all kinds of financial jiggery-pokery for any sort of corporate service to make it look profitable if you wanted to. You take enough cost out and say that's off the balance sheet, and oh look, it's profitable now. The real issue for me on things like Game Pass is it healthy for the developer? Under the subscription model, the developer essentially becomes a wage slave, he argues. He continued on to say that they're not creating value, putting it in the marketplace, hoping it explodes, and profit sharing and overages and all that nice stuff. It's just you pay me X dollars an hour, I built you a game, here, go put it on your servers. I don't think that it's really inspiring for game developers. Now, honestly, I think this accusation is just so wrong on so many different levels. First off, can we chill out with the Xbox Game Pass profitability conversation for at least a couple months? I don't know how many times Xbox and Microsoft needs to say the exact same thing before it sinks in for people. From a business perspective, Game Pass is doing just fine. Shawn here is basically trying to throw another wrench into the conversation by suggesting that its profitability is somehow manipulated by Microsoft. Whatever. I'm not even going to get into all of that today. But this idea that Game Pass is bad for developers because it doesn't inspire them is just completely asinine. I'd argue that it actually helps developers be more creative because it allows them to be more unorthodox and still attract a large audience that can maybe help push their games. And that's another thing. There's not really a lot of games on Game Pass that only relies on Xbox Game Pass for its money. Most games on Game Pass are also trying to sell their games on other platforms, whether that be on Steam, PlayStation, or even on Nintendo, and that actually includes first-party Xbox games as well. So yes, it's still important for them to sell well across all platforms. Game Pass, in a lot of ways, is used as an advertising tool for a lot of developers because it helps word of mouth for their games, all while said developer gets an upfront paycheck from Xbox by including it into Game Pass day one. But you know what? Let me just go ahead and list a few Game Pass games, and then you can kind of tell me if you think that they're uninspired, as was claimed by Shawn Layden. So how about Expedition 33? It's a Game of the Year contender, built by a highly passionate team that more or less showcased why AAA-style JRPGs has a future within the game industry. Seems like they kind of proved Square Enix wrong with their view on Final Fantasy, but you know what? Nonetheless here, how about Lies of P? Probably one of the best Souls-likes from a studio not named from software that launched into Game Pass day one. How about Hi-Fi Rush, a highly creative rhythm beat-em-up game? Or hey, what about Tunic? Or Grounded? What about Ori and the Will of the Wisps? Or maybe even Pentiment, which is a game that probably wouldn't even exist without something like Xbox Game Pass. And I mean, I can just go on and on and on. Do these games sound uninspired to you? Because I certainly don't view them that way. Now, yes, there are going to be some games that launches into Game Pass, and, they're not going to end up being very good. But is that because of Game Pass? Is it somehow Game Pass's fault that they're not good? Because if that's the case, what about all these other games that aren't launching into Game Pass that are also bad? Something like Drag X Drive from Nintendo. We talked about that game yesterday. It has like a 63 on Metacritic. That game seems more uninspired than any of the games that I just mentioned. How about Concord from Sony? A game that flopped in 2 weeks. $300 million down the drain. Was that game also uninspired? And if so, what's the reason for it? Because, hey, wasn't tied to a subscription. I mean, for that matter, I can very easily argue that AAA games and live service titles are what's truly uninspired right now. AAA games have to play it so safe now because their budgets are so ridiculously out of control. They're basically creatively bankrupt by this point. And then for your live service games, a lot of them come off as generic cash grabs, solely meant to sell you on microtransactions and expansions, because that's where the game industry is having most of its problems. That's not exactly linked to Game Pass and its business model. So what exactly are we talking about here? I don't know. I just get tired of this nonsense sometimes. I don't understand why we have to continually attack one of the only consumer-friendly options that we have for consumers. I mean, can we talk about the state of AAA games instead? Can we talk about why we need to spend $300+ million on game budgets? Can we talk about how development is taking 5, 6, 7, 8 years? Where's the accountability for that? Can we talk about live service games and why 90% of them ends up being a flop? Can we talk about microtransactions and how they've ruined a lot of games? Can we talk about the greed that a lot of these publishers have by pushing these type of agendas? Can we talk about any of that anti-consumer stuff instead? Can that be the focus for a day? Or does it just always have to be about Game Pass because after all of these years, some people just can't accept that maybe, just maybe, it's not the worst thing in the game industry after all? I don't know, maybe those just aren't problems and I'm just imagining all of this is happening. Yeah, okay, whatever. Let me know what you think about all of this. Do you agree with Sean Layden or not? Do you think that Game Pass is just a terrible thing? And if so, let me hear it in the comments below and exactly why you think that's the case. Anyways, though, that's going to be with this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.